Makes sense to me. Uh, what about the role of the Arab states in this? Do you believe that up till now they've been helpful, harmful, neutral?
Well, I clearly they haven't been helpful enough because we're not anywhere near the degree of success that we need. But looking back is not really the point, except to learn from past mistakes. And there have been mistakes on all sides. The important point, I think, in this regard, is to further develop the Arab peace proposal that the then Crown Prince, now King of Saudi Arabia, initiated some years ago. I don't agree, and nor would I expect the Israelis to agree, to some of the principles that were laid out. However, if further fleshed out and further developed, I think we might find that the gap between the Arab peace proposal and that which might be acceptable to the Israelis may not be quite as large as we might imagine.
Now, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton has talked recently about what the U.S. position is toward a two-state solution, what we would expect from both sides. Do you think that the time is ripe for President Obama to put all this on the table as a formal proposal?
I think there will be a time, and it may not be that long in the future, where it may be wise to present an American plan. The only hesitation I have is that it would not be helpful or successful if the president winds up putting out a plan and both sides wound up immediately rejecting it. That would probably cause a significant setback. But what I think the president can do in the very short, urgent time frame, rather than laying out possibly an entire plan, suggest in very significant and specific terms how, for instance, we deal with the issue of borders. Because in dealing with the issue of borders, we also, in effect, deal with the issue of settlements. Because I think it's a reasonable expectation that any border that would be within any mainstream view of consensus thought would in effect put at least two-thirds of the Jewish Israelis who are now outside of the 67 borders within the internationally recognized borders of Israel. So these may be the kinds of individual points of reference that the American side can put forth that might help advance very serious negotiations.
Congressman Wexler, you have a reputation for being both strategic and very practical. Do you think that the United States can take on a push toward an Arab-Israeli peace at the same time as we're dealing with the Iraq war, the Afghanistan war, potential crisis with Iran? Can we throw this into a pot and make it a priority equal to those? Do our interests call for that?
I believe that we can, and more importantly, I believe that we must. And even more importantly, the President of the United States has said very clearly that peace in the Middle East is an American national interest. And I believe in that regard he's 100% correct. It requires presidential leadership. It requires a determined Secretary of State, which we have in both counts. But what it also requires are leaders in the region, in Israel, in Egypt, in Saudi Arabia, within the Palestinian community, and others, that are willing to take risks for peace, that are willing to step out a bit of the conventional box that those leaders of those countries have stayed in too often, out of security concerns, out of a concern that the other side was not going to be forthcoming. What I have learned in my 13 years in Congress, which needs to change, is that leaders throughout the region too often view things as a zero-sum game. That if Israel gains, the Arabs lose. Or if the Arabs gain, Israel loses. No, it's actually just the opposite. The potential for the region in the Middle East is enormous. When you look at the kind of technology that is being developed in Israel, the kind of technology that's being developed in the United Arab Emirates, the kinds of financial services that are required within the region, the kind of educational institutions that are being built and must prosper within the region, the kind of economic agreements, the kind of economic interchanges that need to happen and should happen. We're on the brink of achieving that. This is a situation where the will is there. The question is just figuring out the mechanism, the venues in which the political leaders can safely arrive at some of these decisions that will require political risk. That's where the United States comes in. That's where our allies in the European Union come in. It's not an easy task. It's a monumental task. And yes, it is difficult to achieve it in the midst of a war in Iraq, Afghanistan. And let's not forget, the Iranians have still determined to act irresponsibly and pursue an enrichment program that will lead to nuclear weapons. That must be stopped. And that's an entirely different subject. But that, of course, inflames the region in a very significant way as well.
Let me ask you the toughest question, I think, that follows from the good sense you've just made. What is Washington's leverage over the parties to bring about the kind of conclusion that we all hope for and that you're going to be working full-time for? What can we use besides good common sense and persuasion?
Well, I don't think it is entirely a question of leverage, but let us not forget, even though we're in the midst of a difficult economic period, and even though we're in the midst of two wars, at least in terms of Iraq and Afghanistan, the United States still is the world's single military superpower, and our reach is immense, and our ability to persuade, especially when we are acting in a manner as you described, with common sense and with prudence, our ability to persuade and to galvanize forces is still quite significant. On top of that, there's a very gifted man living at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And while understandably President Obama has many, many concerns of an immediate nature, when he is given an opportunity to reach out to broader audiences, I believe that he, as a particular actor in this process, can be immensely successful.
Congressman Wexler, I'm sad to see someone with your wisdom leaving Congress, but I think the center is lucky to have a formidable guy like you heading it in the coming years. I wish you good luck.
Oh, you're being very kind, and I thank you, and I wish you well also. And to all your viewers, let's hope it's a very happy and healthy holiday season and a prosperous new year, and I thank you for your kindness.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Your people at your end, do they have anything else they wanted to cover, or did you?
I thought this was wonderful. Thank you, Congressman, if you have anything else.
I'm good.
My pleasure, Robert. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.